buy drinks. Run up a check and it's pending. She talking my news.
Alright guys, back with another YouTube video today. If you're new, subscribe to the channel for more interesting content. If you've been here before, thanks for returning. But today we're gonna be reacting to a US soldier being taken by aliens. Okay, let's get into it.
The year was 1956 at the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The site was used for rocket tests, and Major William Cunningham was involved in collecting debris for tests after a successful launch. Assisting him was Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett. It was an uneventful day full of tedious work, and the two men separated to cover different areas of the field. But what had been a predictable day of work was about to become anything but when Cunningham was snapped out of his labor by a blood-curdling scream from nearby. It was Lovett. In the New Mexico desert, danger wasn't uncommon, especially with venomous snakes everywhere. Cunningham was prepared to spring into action with first aid if Lovett had been bitten, but he wasn't prepared for what he found. The scream was Lovett, but what had grabbed him wasn't a snake or anything from this world. Lovett was being dragged, screaming in terror, by a long metal arm that was wrapped around his legs. It was so long Cunningham didn't even know where it ended until he looked up. The long metallic appendage wasn't on the ground, but it was leading up to a large silver disc in the sky, hovering 20 feet overhead. Cunningham stumbled back, frozen in horror, and watched as Lovett was pulled into the sky and into the disc, which rose into the sky and disappeared from view. Major Cunningham radioed for help, but the horror was just beginning. The site was soon swarming with security teams as they combed the missile testing grounds for any sign of Lovett, but nothing could be found. Cunningham was incoherent and kept talking about an inhuman object having kidnapped the soldier, and most believed he suffered a mental breakdown. He was taken to the base hospital for observation and questioning, but he never wavered from his story that Lovett had been taken into the air by a UFO. Backing up his account, according to some sources, the base had a radar system that did pick up an unidentified radar contact near the location at the time Lovett was taken. This caused the military to step up the search, examining the surrounding desert for the next few days. But it would be 3 days before anything was found, and what they found would shock and confuse everyone. It was Sergeant Jonathan Lovett's body, almost 10 miles from where he'd been taken. Many people had suspected Cunningham might have been the one to hurt Lovett, but the location of the body made that near impossible. He wouldn't have had the time to move the body before he radioed for help. The medical examiners concluded that the body had been exposed to the elements for between 1 and 2 days, meaning Lovett had been somewhere else before his body was left in the desert. And he was totally naked. But that wasn't the only thing that was different about his body, and horrors that had been done to him made people think of one thing: aliens. Since the
So if you're looking to build a highly profitable, semi-automated
That's great.
watching this video,
earliest UFO sightings, farmers had claimed their cattle were being taken from fields by UFOs and returned to Earth dead and horribly mutilated, often with precise markings that looked like they'd been done by a machine. Most people believed that there were other explanations, like cults or natural causes like predators and parasites. A ranting farmer claiming that his prize cow Bessie was taken by aliens wasn't usually enough to get federal investigators involved, and there'd been no reports of anything like this happening to a human until now. The on-base medical investigators soon discovered that Lovett's corpse had been horribly mutilated, with his tongue removed at the root and his eyes neatly gouged out. Even more horrifying, his anus and genitalia had been removed, and many of his organs had been taken out. Making it more confusing, they'd all been neatly extracted as if through a surgical procedure. But no mad surgeon would do this to a human. The final revelation about Lovett's body had been the most disturbing. His body had been carefully drained of blood, but the vascular system was intact, not like what happens when someone bleeds to death. Who or what could have done this to Sergeant Jonathan Lovett? The answers aren't going to be easy in coming. Project Grudge Report had 14 files, and the first 12 and the 14th have all been declassified. They discuss various UFO sightings with a good amount of evidence for them, but no conclusive proof. But Grudge Report number 13 isn't mentioned in any official files and remains firmly classified to this day, over 60 years later. That's left many conspiracy and alien abduction buffs with nothing to do but discuss their theories of the Lovett-Cunningham incidents, with each theory having strong proponents but many holes. The most common theory among skeptics is that Major Cunningham killed Lovett, possibly in a dispute over the handling of the debris. But that raises the question, who could have done that to the body so precisely? Cunningham didn't have any medical training, so he would need an accomplice. With the military base having a fully stocked base hospital and on-site doctors, the prevailing theory is that he could have gotten a doctor on the site to find the body, move it further off-site, and do the mutilations to it while the search had been called off to make it look like something otherworldly was the culprit. But this would take a lot of coordination at a time when everyone was being closely watched, and the surgical precision needed was likely beyond the ability of a 1950s Air Force medic. Another theory is that Sergeant Lovett fell prey to the very normal horrors of the desert, and Major Cunningham's exhaustion and confusion led him to see something much more twisted and horrible than what really happened. The New Mexico desert is a dangerous place full of predators, including mountain.
Do not pay
Yeah, that's good.
killers to find the
mountain lions that are long.
He said if he cut his tongue out, testicle, something up, and drain his blood. That is something crazy right there. I won't lie.
Large and aggressive enough to drag off and maul a human. That doesn't explain the smooth mutilations, but the long lag time between Lovett's abduction and his body's discovery could mean that he had time to bleed out, and then his body could have been moved again by another predator. But for the descriptions of the body to be accurate, it would take a much more intelligent predator to pull this off, possibly even a human predator. One of the most popular theories about unexplained abductions and mutilation involves dangerous cults of devil worshippers who perform sacrifices to their dark god. Usually they target animals in their rituals, explaining the rash of cattle mutilations. They'd be able to use the sharp knives and surgical tools needed to mutilate an animal or a person and drain them of blood. While there hasn't been a documented case of a murder traced to these cults, there are many unexplained disappearances throughout the US that have never been solved. The kidnapping of a US soldier, though, would be a massive escalation that would bring a much larger police presence down on these cults. And there's no record of a manhunt for the culprits in Lovett's murder, raising the odds that whatever killed him didn't come from this earth. Are there actually aliens stalking the deserts looking for prey to experiment on and then returning them to Earth, their bodies destroyed? The sheer number of cattle found mutilated over the year lends credence to the theory, and the description by Major Cunningham of what took his fellow soldier doesn't match anything from this Earth. The extent of the injuries to Sergeant Lovett's body make it hard to imagine anything human or animal could have done it. But if aliens kidnapped and murdered a US soldier, wouldn't the United States have gone to war? We've all seen the movies where aliens attack and America comes roaring back to blow up their ships. The only question is, with what weapons? In the 1950s, the space program was just getting started. The description Cunningham gave of the ship that took Lovett was several centuries beyond anything humans had, and no one would have known how to track it or fight it. If Sergeant Lovett was killed by an alien ship, the US could have done very little but watch the skies and try to prevent another attack. But there's another theory about the strange death of Sergeant Jonathan Lovett that's gaining more attention as people look into the strange case of Project Grudge File number 13. When a government file is highly classified, like file number 13, good luck at getting a look at it. So where do we know about the Lovett-Cunningham incident from? A pair of prominent conspiracy theorists have claimed to be part of the long-defunct Project Grudge, which allowed them to see the original file. The first, the notorious UFO theorist William Cooper, claimed to have seen it in the 70s and was the first to make public the supposed horrific deaths of Lovett's mutilation. William English, a former Green Beret captain, was working as a U.S. security detail at a base in England when he supposedly got a hold of the file. Colin Bertram, who collected much of the information for a History Channel special of the case, also mentioned that the case was discussed by Frank Joseph, a controversial racist conspiracy theorist who believed a war with extraterrestrials was coming. These three accounts have been circulating, furthering the spread of the rumors about the incident. But what has the government actually said about it? The conspiracy theorists will tell you that the government doesn't want
I don't want anybody
you to know the truth, that they scrubbed all record of the incident from the books, and they would be right. If you comb the military files for any record of the strange death of Sergeant Jonathan Lovett, you'll find nothing. Nor will you find any record of what happened to Major Cunningham after his horrible discovery. But they've gone further. because you won't find any record of either man ever being part of the United States Air Force, or in fact having existed at all. Did the government scrub all record of these men from existence, including everyone who knew them, to cover up this horrible incident? Or did they just never exist at all? What we know about Project Grudge File number 13 is that a man supposedly died horribly, but there's no record of any of it happening. And the only claims that it did happen come from a trio of discredited conspiracy theorists who claim they somehow got a look at the most highly classified government document of all time. And the government, which supposedly covered up the case for decades, let them go around telling everyone and even publish books on the incident. Was the Black Ops assassin who covered up the incident on leave or something? The truth may be out there, but the truth about the Lovett-Cunningham incident may be much closer to Earth, and there's no proof it ever happened. But anyone who reads about it is probably still going to keep a closer eye on the stars. For more on whether aliens are out there, check out Science.
What y'all think? Y'all think it really happened to him? I think the story real or not? I actually don't even know. There's like a lot of stories out there about aliens and stuff. Like, some of them gotta be right though. Like, I do believe it's like the universe too big for us to just be the only things out there. Like, come on now, gotta be something else out there. But yeah, if you want more content like this, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all in the next video.
Heard them lasers talking now that we don't pay that no mind. Didn't need to watch and know that I be hearing no.